Today, we are going to talk about something that has been requested about 1,000 times by 1,000 different people, and that is a day in the life of me. To be honest, I feel a little silly even saying that, but at the same time, I feel honored because I know that I get that request on a regular basis because I'm practicing what I preach, which is make health your hobby and lead by example. Welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast, where we provide education and inspiration to help guide you on your journey to look better, feel better, and most importantly, heal better. Hello, and welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Schultz, and today we are going to discuss what it looks like to make health your hobby and how I have achieved that over the years, not overnight. But first, I think it's important for those that don't know my story to hear at least an abbreviated version of it so you can understand that this definitely has been a health journey for me, like it is for so many people. And it's why I'm so passionate about health, so incredibly passionate about helping others who are interested in living a healthy life, because honestly, I strongly believe that that is what God wants for all of us. So here's my story. I was raised on a dairy farm about 20 minutes south of where I'm recording this right now in a small town of Oliva, Wisconsin. So my three brothers, my sister, and I, we were raised by very health conscious, naturally health minded parents. We ate out of our own garden. My dad had huge gardens that we had to work in and help plant and help harvest, and hoeing, which was, I think, everybody's worst job. We ate our own animals. We ate our own beef, our own chicken, our own eggs. We drank raw milk directly from the bulk tank. Remember my grandparents who lived right next to us, they would at times make our own butter. We made our own ice cream. So we ate very healthy, and we lived a very healthy life. And then as a result of that, we were an incredibly healthy family. And then I graduated from high school. The day after graduation, I left to work at Yellowstone for the summer before starting college. And if you are not familiar with the freshman 15, it is referring to the fact that many college students put on about 15 pounds during their freshman year of college because they get away from home, they eat differently, they have a different lifestyle, they often drink more. Well, I put on the pre-freshman 55. So 55 pounds before I started my freshman year of college. And then I added another 35 pounds during my freshman year. And then I maintained that extra 90 pounds basically throughout my entire 8 years of undergraduate and graduate school. And then during my last year of grad school, when I was nearing graduation, all of the drinking, the smoking, the sedentary fast food lifestyle, and all of the other horrible things that I was doing to my body caught up with me, and I got incredibly sick. So I was sick to the point where I was bedridden for about 3 to 4 months. I had to take an entire semester off of school during that time. And at that time, I literally, those 3 to 4 months, I had no solid bowel movements the entire time. I think it was about 2 months in, I started coughing up blood, and I was doing that on almost on a daily basis. The doctors thought that I initially had tuberculosis. Thank God it didn't end up being that. But then they diagnosed me with IBS and all kinds of diverticulitis. They had all kinds of theories of what was going on with me. Never officially did get a diagnosis, besides the fact of what I know now was I was horrifically sick. So during that period of time, I lost about 70 pounds in total. And it was during that time that I made a decision to start making some changes. So once I had regained some of my health and was able to be upright and moving and finally be able to keep some food down, I started drinking smoothies in the morning. So that was the first change that I made. I had a friend at the time that was trying to help me with having a healthier lifestyle and encouraged me to start drinking smoothies in the morning. So that was it. That was like my only nutritional change that I made. I started throwing some vegetables and greens, as well as some frozen berries into a blender, along with some greens powder. And that was it. I would make that. That would be my breakfast, which was remarkably better than prior to that. I was only eating hearty sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits for breakfast. And then I started going to the gym. So that was it. Smoothies, and I started going to the school gym. So those are the only two changes really that I made, but that was enough for me to feel better. I felt so much better, especially obviously during those 3 to 4 months. But even prior to that, I felt better than I had since high school. And I started to notice the way that I looked was much different. Not just the obvious loss of 70 pounds, but starting to add some muscle. I noticed postural differences and confidence. And from there, I was hooked. I knew that like this was the new thing for me. So by no means was I all in on health at all. I was still drinking, I was still smoking, I was still eating fast food. I had just made those changes, and I decided there was no going back, at least from there. So it wasn't overnight, but it started me down a road of better health. And then gradually I continued to add more and more good things, not even really weekly by any means, but when I look back on that each year, I would just add something different without necessarily putting any thought to that. But it was because I was continuing to educate myself. I was going to seminars. I was reading books on health. I was watching videos at the time. And at that time I was reading, or not reading, but listening to books on tape, popping in a cassette in my car. And then all of that has led me to the point now, 27 years later from when that happened, from when I was bedridden, to where I can fully say at this point in my life that health really is my hobby. It's not something that I say. Sports used to be my hobby. Sports used to consume me. Like I was everything: Packers, Badgers, Brewers, Bucks. Being a Wisconsin boy, I knew everything about every single one of their teams. I knew the schedule. I knew their rosters. I knew preseason stuff. I knew everything. And now I still love them. It's just not my life anymore. It doesn't consume me, and neither does health, but it is absolutely, positively my hobby at this point. Okay, so before we jump into what my daily routine now looks like, a few really important points to discuss. And I want you to listen to these carefully because they are incredibly important. Number one, it took me 27 years, as I mentioned, to get to where I was when I started that health journey to where I am now. So do not get overwhelmed and feel like you have to incorporate everything that I'm talking about today immediately, because admittedly, it's a lot. But also don't make the mistake of thinking that it should take you 27 years either. It wasn't like I had a 27-year plan to get to this. And there are plenty of low or no cost things. In fact, I think the majority of things that I'm going to talk about, besides obviously food and a few others, the majority of things are very low or no cost things that you can absolutely incorporate right away. And had I known about them sooner, for sure, I would have incorporated them sooner as well. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to mention some higher priced items also that I use, like saunas and red light therapy and PEMF mats, PEMF, if you've never heard of that. It stands for pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. But these are things that I have accumulated over the years, and Sarah, my wife, and I chose to spend money on them because it's a priority for Sarah and I to be healthy and to raise healthy kids. So I'm the last person in the world to give financial advice, and clearly this is not a financial podcast, but I will say one thing when it comes to being able to afford these things, at least for us. As I mentioned, health is a top priority for me, right along with my love for Jesus, Sarah, Caprice, Ava, and Teo, because I know I'm a better Christian, I'm a better husband, and I am absolutely, positively a better parent when I'm healthy. One of my recent podcasts was Healthy Body, Strong Mind, and that is so evident in what I do every day. And if I look at my mental health in the past, when my physical health sucked, and now it is completely different. When I am physically healthy, I'm mentally healthy. And most people certainly know that. They just don't really connect the dots always. So I know I'm a better everything when I'm healthy because I'm physically healthy and I'm mentally healthy. So back to the financial advice. Vehicles for Sarah and I are not a priority for us. We buy used vehicles in the 60 to 90,000 mile range that we can afford to buy outright and not have payments on them. And then we drive them until they die. My vehicle that's sitting outside here right now has 187,000 on it. I think Sarah's has like 155,000. What that does, it allows us to have money to save up for a future vehicle because we don't have that monthly payment. So we can be putting money aside for a future vehicle purchase, along with spending more money on high quality food, high quality supplements, things like saunas and red light panels and non-toxic mattresses for our entire family, water filtration systems for our home. I could go on and on. We have several of those things in our house, but that is how we have them. And we even downgraded our home drastically, as our kids say. We went from the castle homey to the old homey, they say. So we downgraded our home a couple of years ago, really for ultimately the same reason. So the reason I even mention any of that is because I constantly hear from people, I would do that if I could afford it. So this is just a little food for thought, because you can say all day long that your health is your priority, that it is a priority for you to get healthier, but a priority is where you spend your time and it's where you spend your money. So you have to ask yourself and be honest, do the things you truly prioritize that you talk about and say you prioritize, do they match up with where you are spending your time and money? So I really hope that didn't come across as a lecture in any way. And I will say, if money wasn't an issue at all for my family, I would also drive nice vehicles and have all of those other things. But for other people that are in situations like my family is, that is what we do to be able to afford those healthier things. Number 3, I'm a huge fan of what I call health stacking, because if I didn't stack things together, it would literally be impossible for me to fit it all in a day. And that's what you'll see as I go through my daily routine. Number 4, nearly all of the things that I mention as part of my daily routine are available on our website in our one-stop health shop to make it easier on you if something comes to mind and you're like, oh, yeah, I would really like to incorporate that. The large majority, if not everything that I mentioned, you'd be able to find down there. I fully realize, saying everything that I just said, that every situation is different. So my routine isn't going to work for everyone, clearly. But that is the whole purpose of being intentional about things. It's the whole purpose about being organized. It's the whole purpose about making sure that your time and money match your priorities so that you can set up your life, your day, your week, your routine to work for you. Nutridyne is my number one choice for the vast majority of my family supplements. I'm a huge fan of nearly everyone taking what I call the foundational 4 supplements: a multivitamin, a spore-based probiotic, omega-3 fish oil, and vitamin D3 with K2. The large majority of people are deficient in many of these nutrients, and they are the building blocks to gut health, immune system strength, brain health, heart health, and every other aspect of your health. Don't fall into the trap of chasing symptoms with supplements, and instead start to rebuild your health with the foundational 4. We partnered with Nutridyne so that you can save 15% on every order, and not just with the foundational 4, but all of your other supplements as well. Go to foundationalhealth365.com, click on Shop Brands, and then Nutridyne, set up your account, and you're all set to automatically get 15% off all orders. Now let's get back to the Foundational Health Podcast. Let's get into the fun stuff. So my morning routine. First of all, I have to say this about the morning. As you'll see later, my nighttime routine sets up my morning routine. And before I figured that out, my morning routine was honestly awful, because I would have this great plan, all of these really good intentions, but because I would wake up groggy and tired instead of now, where I wake up ready to take on the day, none of it would get accomplished, or very little of it would get accomplished. And by no means, I don't want to give you the impression that, like, I'm this machine that I just wake up every day feeling like $1,000,000 ready to attack the day. Certainly not the case 100% of the time, but it is the case most of the time. And that was not the case before for me at all. I would wake up feeling so groggy, so tired, not knowing why. I had got 7, 8 hours of sleep, or at least I was in bed for 7 to 8 hours, but I would wake up feeling awful and then I just wouldn't get things done. What I do now is I wake up 90 to 120 minutes, usually 120 minutes, 2 hours, before I need to leave the house. So typically for me, I'm waking up at 5 a.m., at least during the work week. When I wake up, I lay on my PEMF mat for a 30-minute period of time with my neck and low back roll. So I have a roll underneath my neck. I've got a roll underneath my low back to improve the health of my spine. And then typically, honestly, I do that quickly. So I come out of bed, go to the bathroom, I hop on my PEMF mat, I fall back to sleep before my second alarm goes off. Now, prior to having a PEMF mat, I would do that where I would set my alarm 30 minutes before I get up. And I often talk about not hitting the snooze button, so this is not the same. But I would set 2 alarms, and I would just have my neck roll, my low back roll right next to my bed. I would pop those underneath my neck and my low back, and I go back to bed for 30 minutes. What that does for me is I wake up with little to no neck or back stiffness. It's a game changer for me. And I've been doing that for years. Then when that second alarm goes off and I get out of bed, I go straight to the bathroom. I splash cold water on my face. I just do it 10 times. I don't think there's any magic number there, but I feel like 10 is the magic number for me, at least to wake me up. So I run the water till it gets as cold as it can get for about a minute. I splash that cold water on my face 10 times. And then scientifically, what that does is it's stimulating your vagus nerve. It creates a dopamine response and it absolutely wakes you up. Now, the reason that's key for me right away is because if I don't do something like that, then I'm not very awake and I go into my stretching routine, which we'll talk about in a bit. And I'm just prone to I'm down on the floor, I'm doing some stretches, and I just want to lay here and not get things done. But when I splash cold water in my face, I'm awake and I'm ready to go. I then gargle for 30 seconds. The reason I do that is also vagus nerve stimulation. There's actually some fantastic science on how if you're doing things to stimulate your vagus nerve, you can even, I shouldn't say prevent, but you can up your odds of preventing cognitive decline as you age. It keeps you sharper, it keeps your memory better, it helps you focus more, and it just helps heal the brain to hopefully prevent cognitive decline. I then take 2 servings of amino acids. That's like one of the first things I do every single morning. I have for a few years now, and I do that because I've just gone all night without getting any protein, obviously, while I'm sleeping, but without getting any of the building blocks of protein for my muscles and for my bones and the rest of my body as well, all the great things that protein does. And amino acids are the building blocks for proteins. So it starts to feed my muscles, but it does that without breaking a fast. So that's why I take those 2 servings of aminos. And then I take my foundational 4 supplements, the D3 probiotic fish oil multivitamin. I also take a methyl complete every single day. I take a B complex, and I take a supplement called NAC, N-acetylcysteine, and that is a fantastic detox supplement, which is why I take that. I then grab my water bottle. I mix in my creatine as well as my electrolytes. So I have a 26-ounce water bottle. And my goal for the day, every day, is to drink 4 to 6 of those throughout the day. And the reason 4 to 6 is I'm always doing a minimum of 4. But then if I'm doing an intense workout or if I'm going to be outside sweating in the sun all day on a weekend, then I'm shooting for 6 because I want to replenish all of that sweat that I lost. From there, I hit what I call my healing room, which is simply a 10-foot by 10-foot room in my basement that we've dedicated to a lot of the healing things that we have bought over the years. And I just counted this morning, actually, when I was in there. There are 12 different things that I can use, and my wife can use, and my kids can use that help our bodies heal in that room. So at this point, I am now maybe 45 minutes post waking up. So that's that 30 minutes that I'm laying on my spinal rolls plus the other things that I just mentioned. I then turn on what I call my healing music, which is called the God frequency. So this is something that was new to me about, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. And it has made such a difference. So the God frequency, if you Google this, is 963 hertz. So easy number to remember, 963. So 963 hertz, and that frequency is like a spiritual frequency, again, why it's called the God frequency, and it's very healing to your brain. It's very calming as well. So while I'm going through my entire morning routine, I've got the God frequency playing. I'm also, this is where I pray. I'm giving gratitude to God for all the blessings in my life. I turn on my red light at this point, so my red light therapy panel, and I set that for 24 minutes. I then go through about a 12-minute stretch routine in front of the red light panel that includes this order. So I do cat cow, if you're not familiar with that. So cat cow, and you can Google that, so I don't take up too much time describing, but I do that stretch for about 1 minute. I then do child's pose for about a 3 to 5 minute period of time. And that one varies because some mornings, depending on a workout and how hard I worked on a weekend, then I can have more stiffness in my muscles and in my low back, and it just takes a little while longer before I feel like I'm fully loosened up. After I finish with child's pose, I do 15 deep squats. The first one is about a minute long when I hold it at the bottom. So a deep squat, and the key is with this that you want to keep your feet flat on the floor. Most people, when they go into a deep squat, because their hips are so tight and their muscles are so tight everywhere, they go up onto their toes as they're squatting. But the key is you want to go as deep as you can with your feet flat on the floor. So the first one I hold for about a minute, as I mentioned, and the reason for that is I'm kind of rocking back and forth in that deep squat. I rock forward to stretch my calves and my ankles. So I do that for about a minute, and then I go into my deep squat routine, which is going all the way up as high of a toe raise as I can go. I do this all barefoot, of course, and I am holding that toe raise for a few seconds to build the strength in my feet, and then I go back down into a deep squat. I repeat that 15 times. I follow that up with my spinal range of motion stretches. We call them the spinal hygiene stretches. I then do my shoulder mobility stretches, and all of this takes about a 12-minute period of time. And then I turn on my UVB D3 light panel. So UVB rays, which naturally come from the sun, in this case, especially during the winter months, then this is huge for me as the sun becomes less prevalent in the northern climates. I stand in front of that light panel for 12 minutes, and I'm standing in between now my D3 panel that's on the wall and my red light panel. While I'm standing between there, I am doing repetitive neck traction. There's a neck traction unit called Pedimon. We have this listed on our website that I'm a huge fan of. I think if there's one thing you're going to do for your neck every day besides stretching it, besides getting chiropractic care, that this is it for me for home use. So I do that for about a 1 to 2 minute period of time. I also go through my eye exercises for about 5 minutes. We've got guides for all of these things on our website. And then for about the first 6 minutes that I'm doing this 12 minutes in between my D3 panel and my red light panel, I stand on an acupressure mat. So acupressure, another thing, you can Google all the benefits of that, but all kinds of little spiky things in the bottom of my feet, which are so great for you. You can buy those mats for whole body as well. I typically just do the foot one. And then the other half of that time, so I remove my acupressure mat, and then I'm standing on a stone bath mat, which is on top of my bare cement floor. And then I do that for grounding purposes. So this is a routine when I can't get outside. So if the weather is great, if it's a nice morning, if I'm not getting devoured by mosquitoes, I'm outside going through that stretching routine, especially all of the standing stuff while I'm facing the sunrise when possible. But if I'm up before the sun, if I am unable to go outside because it's too cold, it's raining, the mosquitoes are devouring me, whatever it may be, then I'm doing this routine inside. So those grounding, well, it's not even a grounding mat, but that stone bath mat, that's what we have in our bathrooms as well, especially in the basement, because that still allows you to ground as long as you've got a tile floor over cement. So you don't have to be outside to get the benefits of grounding with the earth. I then do a 3-minute cold plunge. So this is all in my healing room. I do a 3-minute cold plunge, which we don't have. You can buy crazy expensive cold plunges. I just made a deep freeze into a cold plunge. I have an upcoming biohacking podcast where I'll talk more about what that looks like, but you can Google and also look how to convert a deep freeze into a cold plunge. And one of the first questions I get from people like, geez, you have a freezer turned on and you're hopping inside of that while it's plugged into the wall? No, that's not the case, but it's a really pretty simple process to convert that. And so that's what I do. So I do a 3-minute cold plunge after I finish that other routine of 24 minutes, and then I hit my bathroom. When I hit the bathroom, I turn on my full spectrum light bulbs above the vanity. I brush my teeth with a toothpaste called Fig, F-Y-G-G. It's a toothpaste that it doesn't have any toxins in it. It's got all kinds of great ingredients that are actually improving oral health, whereas many of them are not. They're loaded with toxic ingredients that make oral health actually worse while they're cleaning your teeth. And they also have all kinds of gut microbiome disruptors in them. So Fig does not have any of those things. And it's also got something called nanohydroxyapatite, which is actually becoming more popular. A lot of people have probably heard about that now, but it's something that actually heals and can rebuild your teeth while you're brushing. So pretty fantastic stuff. I then do a nasal flush with colloidal silver, and I spray that colloidal silver also into my eyes as well as my mouth. Colloidal silver, if you're not familiar with it, it's an antibacterial, it's an antifungal, it's an antiviral. And no, despite what you might read online, no, it is not dangerous if you're smart. It will become dangerous if you're like the guy who turned blue and drank a gallon a day for a year. But if you're spraying it in your eyes, which is fantastic for eye health and killing off viruses. So I use it in any place where a virus, bacteria, fungus can enter the body, which is really through all the facial orifices. And then I also swallow about a half teaspoon of that daily. And I promise that's safe no matter what you're reading from some of the online scare tactics. And then I do something called dry brushing. This is also something that I highly recommend Googling for all the benefits of dry brushing. Mainly, it's skin health and lymphatic flow health. So I dry brush from head to toe for about a 1 to 2 minute period of time before I jump into the shower. And then while I'm showering, I'm always swishing something in my mouth that improves my oral health. So I've changed this up over the years, and I change it up even from month to month. But I typically do a few drops of some essential oils like peppermint or spearmint, which not only taste good, but they also have benefits for your oral health. And then I also spray some colloidal silver or put a little colloidal silver into my mouth with a little squirt of my Fig toothpaste. So pretty simple, but I put that in my mouth before I jump in the shower, and then I'm swishing the entire time that I'm in my shower, trying to get that between my teeth and on my gums everywhere. It's really fantastic for you. It can even help reverse gum disease when you have that, which I did. Story for another day when I do a dental podcast at some point. But I had gum receding to the point where I was told that the only option was to have a surgery to cut some tissue out in one area and patch it in another. And I know a lot of people have probably gone through that. And then when I asked, is there a way to help heal this on my own, I was laughed at. I started Googling, found all kinds of great resources, and that's what led me down this road. And that was, we're probably talking 15 years ago now. And I completely, within a year, healed all of my gum recession, and my mouth was healthier than it has ever been. After my shower, on my head and face, I apply some skin healing lotion. The one that I use, sorry, it's not available online, but my wife makes it. I can tell you some of the things that it contains. Nothing toxic. It's aloe, it's all organic, but aloe, coconut oil, shea butter, beeswax, and then a blend of essential oils. And then before I go upstairs to pack my cooler and get ready for the day, I hang from a bar for about a 1 minute period of time. Amazing for shoulder health and grip strength, all kinds of benefits. I don't just hang from the bar, I hang and I'm swiveling my hips and move my legs in and out and forward and backwards to get good spinal and hip motion and mobility, as well as improving the shoulder mobility as well. And then I jump on a trampoline for about a 1 to 2 minute period of time. That's incredible. And not a big trampoline outside, I should explain. We're talking a little mini rebounder. And I do that for a 1 to 2 minute period of time. Feels great, helps loosen up my head, but also absolutely amazing for lymphatic flow, which is one of the primary reasons for doing that. So then I go pack my cooler. So I follow the rule of never leave home without your cooler, besides Mondays, of course, where I do my full day fast. And then I refill my water bottle. So I've already gone through an entire water bottle at this point. I refill that water bottle with more filtered water from our Sentry water filtration system, along with my Element electrolyte packets. And this is always where I have my first caffeine. Because, if you've heard me say this before, you shouldn't be consuming caffeine until about 90 to 120 minutes after waking. So I follow that rule very closely since reading that science about a year and a half ago. And then I always stop all caffeine consumption by noon. This is also when I typically will turn my phone on. So I've got my phone on airplane mode. I do that before I go to sleep at night. My phone is always on airplane mode when I sleep, because that is my alarm, and I do not want my sleep getting interrupted. I don't also want the cell phone EMFs that come with it not being on airplane mode. So I turn on my airplane mode, or turn off my airplane mode rather, turn on my phone around this time each day, because I know exactly what happens when the phone gets turned on, and that is something called distractions. So you can have, and I used to make this mistake so much, you can have the best intentions. You could say, I'm going to do exactly what Kevin does in the morning, and then you turn your cell phone on when you wake up in the morning, and that is all gone. Absolutely shot all of your plans, because now you're answering text messages, you're reading emails, you're looking at pointless Facebook posts and just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, pointless unless, of course, they come from Foundational Health. And you're scrolling and absolutely wasting all of your precious time where you should be setting up your day. Now, on weekends, my routine is longer, because on the weekends, I also incorporate sauna, which is part of our healing room. I often do, and this is a topic for another day, but I often do a coffee enema, and that's at least once per weekend that I do a coffee enema while I do my sauna session, part of that health stacking. And then I also follow that up with a 60 to 90 minute strength training and high intensity interval training session. I use something called EWOT, which is exercise with oxygen therapy, when I'm doing any at-home cardio type stuff. And I'll talk more about that on our biohacking podcast as well. And then often on the weekends, the majority of the time, Sarah and the kids join me. So we have our basement. 50% of our basement is a home gym. Again, because health is our priority, we decided we don't need another family room down there. We certainly don't want a bar in our basement. So we turned it into a huge workout area. And at least for my family, that works amazing. We love it. It's great together time. We know that we're showing and leading by example for our kids, and they're at the point where they just absolutely love doing it. Even though they're 7, 9, and 11, they're down there working out. When their friends come over, they're showing them their workout. So it's pretty awesome to see. Monday through Friday on my drive to work, I have about a 30-minute commute to work, and I start that commute with a 5-minute recording of myself going through my daily affirmations. So those daily affirmations contain prayers, it contains my favorite inspirational quotes, it also contains my favorite Bible verses. I'm always adding to that. I'm adding to that in my Google Calendar, by the way, so I'm not constantly recording it. And then maybe every 6 months or so, I will update the audio version of that. That gets emailed to me every single morning. So it's right there. It's top of my inbox about when I'm ready to leave for work so that I can easily just click on that recording from an email and I play it when I'm in the car. Some of the best advice I got many years ago was turn your car into a mobile classroom. And I live by that rule. After that, because I live by that rule, I feed my mind with audiobooks and podcasts about health, faith, finances, self-improvement type stuff, all positive things that I want to get better at. Little side note here. On a consistent basis, one of the top 3 podcast categories in the United States is true crime stories. So, if your goal is to be a criminal or a better criminal, that's a great idea. If your goal is to have more health, more wealth, more love in your life, be a better Christian, then you should probably not listen to true crime stories and maybe instead listen to things that actually are a priority to you in your life. I don't say that out of judgment. I just don't understand why anybody wants to put that negativity into their head when there's so much positivity into the world or in the world that you can focus on instead of focusing on all of the negative BS. And the reason I do all of that is because I know that thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, habits become your character, and your character becomes your legacy. And part of my daily affirmations is I want to leave a legacy of generational health, wealth, and Jesus love. So that is what I feed my mind with on a daily basis. And then when I get to work, I have my office set up. And again, I know not everybody has this situation, but I make what I have work for me. So I have my office at work set up for success. Anytime you walk into my office, there will be Baroque classical music playing. This is something that I did about 5 years ago. Classical and specifically Baroque style. I had never heard of it prior to 5 years ago, but Baroque style classical music helps your mind focus and it's very healing for your mind and your body. So that is always playing in my office. No, whether I'm working out, whether I'm doing paperwork, unless I'm having a conversation with somebody on the phone where it gets paused, that is always playing. Also in my office, there's a pull-up bar in the doorway. Hanging from that pull-up bar is one of those Pettibon neck traction units that I mentioned. I have Bowflex Select Tech dumbbells in there along with a bench, workout bench that is. I have a barbell with some weights on it. I have exercise bands. I have an exercise floor mat. I have a push-up bar that I use on the floor. So I can do push-ups in all these different hand positions that are easier on my wrists. And then I have a whiteboard with my workout routine each day on the wall. So I'm following a routine. I change that up, of course. I don't have any set time frames on that, but I typically will change that up about every 3 to 4 months or so. And then one of the things that is so huge for keeping me on task in my office, especially, is I use a timer. It's called Clock App from Microsoft to stay on task. So every day, for instance, at 1:45, that alarm, so it's a clock app which has timers. It also has alarms, all kinds of cool settings that you can use. You can put a little pop-up in the corner of your screen or move it around wherever you want. Every day at 1:45, there's an alarm that goes off within that clock app. And that alarm says workout. And so that's when I know at 1:45 I'm starting my 45-minute strength training routine that I do every day of the week. And then I take a 3-minute break between each one of those sets where I also use the timer. So I stay on task. So as soon as I get done, I hit that timer, which is popped up on my screen. That starts counting down. And I know I have 3 minutes for some crazy productivity. And I do have crazy productive paperwork time. It's miraculous, really, what I accomplish in that 45 minutes where, again, I'm working out, but I also have the paperwork time in between my sets. And so I have crazy productive paperwork time. And it's really mind boggling the amount I get done as opposed to when I'm just sitting down, standing rather, because I don't sit at a desk ever, but doing my paperwork. So I get the dopamine rush from my workout combined with my Baroque classical music playing. And that is, like, for me, the perfect recipe for being focused and being productive. My desk, as I mentioned, is a standing desk. I stand 100% of the time when I am working at a desk, just like I do for my podcasts. I'm barefoot always when I'm standing at a desk. I'm barefoot right now, and I'm standing on an anti-fatigue mat. So I have anti-fatigue mats, my home desk, my office desk, as well as here. Those are absolutely key, and they feel amazing. You're building foot health, you're building foot strength, as well as improving everything from ankle to knee to hip strength, postural strength. All of those things improve when you're standing instead of sitting. When it comes to food, I break my 16-hour intermittent fast with protein. So there's some pretty sound science in always breaking your fast with protein, which is what I choose to do each day. I have a fasting podcast recently where you can get a lot more info on fasting in general. But fasting is one of the most powerful natural tools for health and healing. So my daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly fasting routine looks like this. On a daily basis, I do a 16-hour intermittent fast from approximately 7 p.m. to 11 a.m. So I do that. That's my 16-hour fasting window. And then I have an 8-hour eating window every day. So I'm not strict about this on the weekends, especially considering I almost always do morning workouts on Saturdays and Sundays. And I want to fuel my body before, during, and after my workouts. So there's different ways of doing that for males and females. That's what I do personally. And then weekly, I follow a 24-hour fast, and I do that on Sundays from 7 p.m. So my last meal on Sunday until Monday at 7 p.m. On a monthly basis, I do a 40-hour fast. So the first Monday of every month, I do a 40-hour fast from Sunday, again, 7 p.m. to about Tuesday at 11 a.m. And then quarterly, I do a 72-hour fast, Sunday, 7 p.m. to Wednesday, 7 p.m. And I do that on the first Monday of the quarter. So that is my consistent fasting routine. That will change a little bit from here to there, but for the most part, I stick with that because that's what works for me. Fasting podcasts can give you a better idea of what's going to work for you. And by no means am I saying everybody needs to do that to be healthy. Again, it's what works for me, and I absolutely love it, and I can't imagine doing anything differently at this point. Also, when it comes to nutrition, my nutrition is pretty basic. So this is the biggest question I get, and it's probably the number one request that I get. Like, what does nutrition look like for you and your family on a daily basis? And it looks different for my kids than it does for me. So today is about my routine mainly. I am going to do an upcoming podcast with Aaron, who's also part of Foundational Health, along with Colton and I, who's filming the podcast today. And that podcast is going to be about how to raise a healthy family and how to raise healthy kids. And we'll discuss a lot of what that looks like. But for me, it's whole food nutrition. I follow two principles that my favorite new book, might be my favorite book of all time, but my favorite new book is a book by Jordan Rubin and Dr. Josh Axe, both people that I know personally. Actually, little side note, Jordan Rubin has agreed to be an upcoming podcast guest on our podcast. So crazy excited about that because I have so much respect for this guy. He's an absolute, like, one of my top mentors in my life, even though he probably doesn't even know that. And he has a new book called The Biblio Diet. In that book, and many of his other books, he talks about following two principles when it comes to food. Number one, eat what God created for food, not ultra processed man food. And then number two is eat that food in a form that is healthy for the body. What that means, if I use a couple of really simple examples. So you could say whole food is bread. Well, you can have Wonder white bread, if I use one extreme. Hopefully nobody thinks that's healthy. And then you can have sourdough bread made from einkorn grain, which is what my wife does, which is about as healthy as bread get. And it's often called biblical bread because it is completely different from regular bread. It has almost no gluten in it. It's absolutely, that can be a actual healing food. And then if we look at meat, you can have processed packaged lunch meat and salami loaded with all kinds of toxins in them. And then you can have a burger that's 100% grass-fed, organic, and it is a completely different food. So that's what eat that food in a form that is healthy for the body, not just eat bread, eat meat. It's eating in a form that is healthy for the body. So my first meal on non-fasting days during the week is approximately 11 a.m. During that first meal, I break my fast with protein. So I have about 50 grams of protein, and that is typically from one of three sources, which is wild-caught Alaskan sockeye salmon, pasture-raised eggs, and 100% grass beef. Certainly at times I do other things, and I love elk and I love bison, but those are my three regular go-tos when it comes to protein. And then I have a half an avocado. If you remember from my egg podcast in the past, avocado really helps to amplify some of the nutrients you get from eggs. So they're great to pair together. Plus, avocados are just an amazing, healthy fat. So I do a half an avocado along with an apple. It's actually one of my favorite snacks is an avocado and an apple together with a little bit of sea salt. And then when we get to my second meal is post-workout at about 2:30. It's usually actually right at 2:30 Monday through Friday. And that's because that's when I finish that 45-minute workout before I have to go back to work again. I have 50 more grams of protein post-workout. I also, at this point, I have a banana with raw, soaked and dehydrated nuts and seeds from a company called Wildly Organic. I put that in a bowl with Alexandre A2 casein, 100% grass-fed, whole milk, organic kefir, and then typically a cucumber or a raw carrot as well with that meal. My drive home, so I finish with work. My drive home is where I also listen to more audiobooks and podcasts, and I make any phone calls that I need to make so that I do not have to do that when I get home. I also don't do that typically over my lunch hours because I don't want to interfere with my routine. And then when I get home, which for me isn't usually until like 7 p.m., sometimes as late as 7:30 at night, I turn my phone off for the night so I can focus on my family. And then my third meal of the day typically happens between 7 and 7:30. So I can make sure that I have at least 2 hours of digestion time prior to going to sleep. That meal, 50 more grams of protein, usually from beef or salmon at night, seldom eggs. And then also we do a bunch of sweet potatoes or organic red or white potatoes on a regular basis. I know so many people are freaked out about the starch in potatoes, but it's an absolute God food. Certainly if you're on an extreme diet, which I recommend at times of ketogenic diets for healing or also a 60 days reversing diabetes diet, these are not things you want to do. But on a regular basis, when you're just eating healthy, there is nothing wrong with sweet potatoes or other potatoes as well. We buy all of those organically. And then Sarah and the kids actually chop those up with our little slicer into French fries or slices. We cook them on a big old griddle with organic 100% grass-fed beef tallow. And then we season them with sea salt. And I can't even, like, my mouth is watering right now thinking about it. It's one, actually, as I'm working in the afternoon, it's one of the things that makes me the most excited about going home is potatoes when I get home. And then we have a wide variety of steamed vegetables. And I mean a wide variety. So we don't get these from a bag during the growing seasons, but we certainly do during the winter months, but we freeze a lot of our own stuff as well. But and I say wide variety, I mean in the same pot, that same steamer, we are doing things like beets and different colors of cabbages and carrots and cauliflower and broccoli and peas and beans. Like we have a wide variety, and that gets mixed up depending on the season. Right now, we're eating a ton of squash that we cook separately, of course, in the oven and then mix that all together with the vegetables. At least that's what I do. And I say that because we don't do traditional meals like most families do. So we don't follow recipes. We don't do hot dishes or dishes in general. I hear that complaint from so many parents like, my kids won't even eat what I made. Well, maybe you shouldn't make a big meal then. What we do is one protein choice each night for dinner. We have mixed vegetables that I just mentioned and potatoes, and then you get to make it your meal. So you get to season it the way that you prefer. Do you want to put grass-fed butter on it? Fantastic. You want to put more beef tallow on it or coconut oil? Absolutely. Go for it. Sea salt, as many seasonings and spices. We have a big spice board or rack on the wall right above our oven and countertop where there's about 25 different spices and seasonings on there. I usually add 8 to 10 of them, honestly, per bowl. So we usually eat in bowls. And then Primal Kitchen or homemade condiments. And the cool thing is, I don't ever get sick of any of that. That never gets old to me. And people always say, like, don't you get sick of eating the same thing all the time? And the answer is no, because it tastes different. So one night I might add some of Sarah's homemade ketchup in there. And then the next night I might add some Primal Kitchen hot sauce. And then the next night it's just more butter and seasoning. So it never gets old to me. It always tastes fantastic. The weekend nutrition looks a little bit different. So lunch and dinner are the same, but then for breakfast, because I'm not strict on my intermittent fasting on the weekends, we often do egg bowls. We do magic bowls. Our egg bowls just, of course, have eggs and avocado. I add kimchi, excellent fermented kimchi to that, and then anything else that I want to put in that egg bowl. And then our magic bowls, you've probably heard me describe these before, but this is what I talked about. I have at lunch at times at work with the nuts and seeds and the raw honey, and then also that organic kefir and any fruits that we want to cut up in there. And these also look different for everybody. We don't make one big magic bowl for the family because Sarah hates having apples in there and Caprice hates having bananas in there. So we have all of those available, and you get to make your own magic bowl. And we have a ton of fun doing that. Something new I'm going to start doing in my podcast, and that is called Random Recommendation. So it's time for today's random recommendation. The random recommendation for today is buy a quarter, half, or whole cow from a local trusted farmer that does organic practices and 100% grass-fed beef. And then, and this is the key, have all of the organs from that animal, whatever you get, whether you get a quarter of them, a half of them, a whole cow, have all of the organs ground into the ground beef at the butcher. That way you get all of the benefits of the beef as well as the benefits of the organ meats without actually having to pay for organ meat supplements, without having to eat organ meats, which don't taste very good. When you're mixing them in with the ground beef, they usually call it like a 90-10 mix, so 10% organ meats. You get all the amazing benefits without having to taste it. Our kids don't even know that they're in there, actually. So that is true ancestral biblical eating right there. And there is if that sounds disgusting to you, I promise there is so much science behind that and how great it is for you. Nighttime routine. I strictly follow, and my family does, the 10-3-2-1-0 rule for sleep. I've talked about many times, but quickly, 10 hours before sleep, caffeine is gone. 3 hours, I have my last meal, 2 to 3 hours. 2 hours, I reduce or eliminate all water intake as well as stressful conversations, email, any of that type of thing, anything work related. And then this is usually the time where my family either does game night or a movie night. And then we do that without blue light. So at this point, for us, we're dimming all the lights in the house, not dimming, rather, we actually turn on orange bulbs, red bulbs. We have no blue light entering our eyes about 2 hours before sleep. 1 hour is the steadfast rule on that with no blue light. We just do it a little bit earlier. And then also a key that I don't talk about enough. You don't have to get all the orange bulbs, red bulbs. I love them because I don't then have to walk around with my glasses everywhere. But when we're watching TV, we have orange glasses that we wear so that blue light isn't entering our eyes. We call this in our household, those last 2 hours before bed, mellow mode. So this is not a time where we're going crazy, where we're playing crazy games and kids are running around. We just go into mellow mode to set our bodies up for sleep. So we have red light night lights, we have the bulbs, the lamps, we have clip-on reading lights for the kids. We get all of those from a company called Huga, which is a Wisconsin-based company. They sell them for about half the price of what most places do, and they're just fantastic quality. And then after brushing our teeth before bed, my whole family meets in what we call the cabin room in our 160-year-old farmhouse where it originally started in that cabin. And we go through a spinal range of motion stretches as a family. We're praying as a family at this point. We also talk about our favorite part of the day. It's actually often when we ask one of the kids, what's your favorite part of the day? They will often say right now, because they absolutely love that family time, that quiet time, that praying to God time that we have as a family every single night while we're going through some incredible stretches that set us up for better sleep. When we sleep, we're all sleeping on bioposture mattresses, which have been scientifically shown to increase blood flow and oxygenation to your cells while you sleep. And then all of that increases how you sleep and heal during your sleep. We all use organic pillows and pillowcases, and we sleep in organic pajamas and underwear with no microplastics. Might sound a little crazy to some people, but for us, that is absolutely huge. We look at sleep as obviously not only recovery and healing, but it's a third of your life. So it's a third of your life that for us, it makes sense to spend more money on that. For us, it makes sense to do that in the safest, least toxic environment possible. And we sleep with our air filters on that double as a sound machine. So every bedroom in our house, as well as just the living room upstairs, our gym downstairs, they all have air filtration systems. And at night, we bump those up to level 3. We put them on night mode. And that, again, doubles as our sound machine to make for even better sleep. We have light-proof rooms, which means we have blackout shades. And I actually put black tape over things like smoke detectors, so there's no light entering that room, which also allows you to get into deeper stages of sleep. Well, that's it. And I realized that was a lot, especially as I went through it all. It was even more than I thought. But my prayer for you today is that this didn't seem overwhelming. Go back to what I said in the beginning. Incorporate what you can when you can. The inspirational and educational takeaways from today. Knowledge without action is powerless. So the 3 actionable takeaways for today. Number 1, if health is a top priority for you, look at where you're spending your time and money. Number 2, download our free nutrition, spinal hygiene, shoulder mobility, eye health guide, and so many more. Number 3, start with a small investment in your health. So from my website, go to Huga, buy some red or orange bulbs and night lights. They are a game changer for your sleep. Success equals simple habits performed consistently over time. So this one is incredibly important for this podcast, especially. And remember, you are a leader, whether you think of yourself as one or not. You are a leader, especially if you have children. Lead by example. If you enjoyed today's podcast and you found it beneficial, I want you to think about who needs to hear this message. This isn't just something I say at the end of every podcast. Truly put some thought into who could benefit from this message, and then Be a leader for them. Drop them a text. Tell them to check out the Foundational Health Podcast with Dr. Kevin Schultz, A Day in the Life. Until next time, make health your hobby. Thank you for listening to the Foundational Health Podcast. As always, if you would like to learn more about making health your hobby, visit our website at foundationalhealth365.com and follow me on Facebook at Kevin Schultz DC Foundational Health.